Gen Z is cooked, and not just their dopamine receptors from endlessly scrolling TikTok. I'm talking about financially and economically. Let's go back in time for a second and see what changed. So the year is 1975. You're a 22-year-old fresh out of school and you walk into a big office building, resume in hand, and ask for a hiring manager. Quick conversation and a handshake later, boom, job secured. Give or take a few years, and now you're buying a house for the cost of a car, start a family, and are affording it all in just one salary. Fast forward to 2025. Now you're a 22-year-old drowning in student loans, spending hours applying to jobs that never respond, and if you finally get one, your paycheck goes entirely to renting your closet of an apartment. Gen Z has been called the poorest and laziest generation. But is this true, or did we just get dealt a bad hand financially? Let's take a look into how the economy failed Gen Z. We've all heard the saying, go to college, get a degree, and you'll get a high-paying job once you graduate. Yeah, that's a lie. Since the 1980s, the cost of tuition in the US has gone up by more than 200%, and that's not including the rising cost of student housing, food, books, and $10 coffees. Speaking of coffees, you know that blue-haired barista that makes great lattes and hates capitalism? Here's why she hates it. From 2021 to 2023, Gen Z's debt levels went up by 179%, with most of that being made up of student loans. Since she fell for the lie that she'd end up with a good job after studying astrology, now she gets to intentionally misspell your name to make sure her student loans don't spiral out of control. But hey, at least she's got the save plan. Here's the thing. Even if you study a major that's meant to get you a job, the value of that degree has still gone down significantly since more and more people have degrees. Just ask the computer science guys who were all in school thinking they were going to graduate and make six figures, and now they can't even get a job. The job application process itself has become broken and dehumanizing. Before the days of the internet, a lot of job recruitment was done through in-person events, like job fairs and showing up to the office and asking for a manager. Now, application tracking systems filter out potential candidates with no human intervention. So you could potentially apply to dozens of jobs and get rejected from all of them without an actual human ever seeing your resume. But it gets worse. There's been a trend of ghost jobs, or job postings with no intention of hiring someone for that position. It lets these companies claim they're always hiring or even show job postings, but they just use it to gather talent data with zero expectations of hiring someone.
What?
The beauty of it all is that if you finally do get that coveted job, studies show that 60% of employers fire some of their Gen Z workers within months of hiring them anyway. The final threat looming over the lives and potential career prospects of Gen Z is the rise of automation. It is predicted that by 2030, up to 375 million workers may need to switch careers. This hits Gen Z especially hard, since the jobs most likely to be automated would be simple and replicable tasks, the exact stuff that entry-level positions allow young people to do in order to gain experience. Let's say you were able to secure a job after months of searching and God knows how many applications. Now what? Well, your paycheck may not be as much as you think it is. Since the 1970s, real wages have remained relatively stagnant while worker productivity soared 81%. Real wages is just an economics term to mean the amount of stuff you can buy with your money over time. So let's say you make $10 an hour and can buy an apple for $10. A year later, you got a raise and make $12 an hour, but the cost of the apple went up to $12 too. Your real wage hasn't increased, since the amount of stuff you can buy with the $12 now is the same you could with $10 before. The worst manifestation of this problem is inflation. After the COVID-19 disruptions, money printing since the global financial crisis, and supply chain issues, the prices of everyday goods have been rising for a while now. What nobody talks about with inflation though is that it measures the rate at which prices increase. Going back to the Apple example, in this case the inflation was 20%, from $10 to $12. If inflation becomes 10%, the Apple doesn't go down to $11, instead it goes up more slowly to just over $13. So now that everything is more expensive, Gen Z feels that it needs additional income sources to keep up. This has reached the point where almost half of Gen Z workers have side hustles to make ends meet. Many in Gen Z have also decided to go the opposite way because of the financial stress, sparking a movement known as quiet quitting, where many young people are disengaged at work because they feel they don't get paid enough and have low job security. This isn't just a problem in the West either, with China having a similar movement known as Tang Ping, or lying flat, to push back against the pressure of long working hours and competition. Once these issues start compounding, that's when they get out of control. Many young people are stuck with paying extremely high prices for goods plus paying off their loans, squeezing the majority of their income, making it really hard to save for long-term goals. Here's the thing, we haven't even talked about the worst part yet. There's a classic saying that goes, a housing affordability problem is an everything problem. Housing is one of a human being's basic needs, along with food and water. So why is it so expensive? It's reached a point in many developed countries where people are either ending up homeless or, like much of Gen Z, staying at home with their parents for much longer than previous generations. Let's take a look at some numbers and see how bad it's become. A house that would sell for $23,000 in 1970, which is $150,000 in today's dollars, now costs over $400,000. Buying a house almost anywhere in the country for $150,000 sounds like a joke to anyone under the age of 30. Here's the thing, when boomers were looking to purchase housing in their early adulthood, the home price to income ratio was 4x. Now for Gen Z, that number's closer to 10x. So yeah, young people just have to save 2 years worth of wages with no expenses or taxes to put a down payment on a house. The funniest part of the whole situation is that if you actually do save up 2 years worth of wages to buy that house, the house price probably went up by enough that you need to stall out and save more. So what about people that aren't looking to purchase a home? Even if you don't want to buy, renting in many metropolitan areas has become way too expensive. In Manhattan, the median rent is over $4,000 a month. And in San Francisco, you can be considered low income if you make less than $105,000 a year because basic goods and housing are just that expensive. The thing is, landlords know that the demand for rental units is extremely high, to the point that many choose to leave units vacant instead of lowering prices since they know the demand is still out there. A large percentage of Gen Z is deciding against playing these housing games and deciding to stay home longer. Almost half of 18 to 29-year-olds live with their parents because of how expensive it is to live on your own. Up to this point, we've discussed how Gen Z has the highest amount of student debt ever, has had an extremely hard time finding meaningful employment, have given up on work, and can never afford to own a home. The next question is, how are we reacting? The main reaction has been a shift in mental attitude. Since Gen Z has had to delay reaching traditional life milestones, like having a family and owning a house, their response has been to change their mindsets and opt for different values than previous generations. The delay has reached a point where many people are opting out of having children entirely. In 2003, 81% of young people surveyed said they wanted to become parents. That number has collapsed to 51% today. That's almost a 40% drop in 20 years. There are a lot of factors that would lead to people not wanting kids, like climate change, but you can't deny that raising a child has become way too expensive for most people. Part of this changing attitude has led to Gen Z going through non-traditional career paths and taking advantage of an increasingly digital world. We all know there are a lot of people making money online, and just as many that want to sell you a course on how to do it for $1,500, which is why I'm giving away my course, Touching Grass, completely for free. Just go outside and touch it. It's really not that hard. It can be hard, however, to go outside and experience much of the world, which is why many young people are taking advantage of new workplace flexibility and digital nomadism. Partially, it's because many cities like New York and San Fran have become so expensive that just living there can almost stifle your ability to go anywhere else. The thing is, this digitalization is a double-edged sword. I heard this quote, "Your phone is a tool, but if you treat it like a toy, it'll treat you like a joke." Shout out to some unfiltered guy, good stuff. This rings especially true for Gen Z, who acquired internet access at a very early age. Because of this, they're simultaneously one of the most financially literate generations, but also one of the most jaded. I'll admit, the more and more I learned about finance and how the system has not been working, the more cynical I became. With TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, finding financial advice has never been easier to do. But at the same time as you have positive financial influencers like the Plain Bagel, there are plenty of fake financial gurus selling get-rich-quick schemes and people peddling a fake lifestyle that they don't even have just to flex. This constant messaging makes Gen Z feel even further behind. Imagine, not only are you trailing in terms of your life milestones compared to your parents and grandparents, but then you open your phone to see random people 4 years younger than you with yachts and Lambos. And people are surprised when they see that 40% of Gen Z report struggling with their mental health, citing financial stress as being a large factor. Young people have realized that their chances of living better lives materially than their parents will be tough, so many decide to spend their money on experiences rather than material goods or even sometimes investing. Many say, why save for retirement if I'll never be able to retire anyway? This financial pressure is so widespread in Gen Z that there's a trend called loud budgeting, where young people opt out of expensive activities with friends by simply saying, it's too expensive. I guess this is something older people just didn't do? This shows how much stock young people put into their finances and understanding of other people's financial situations. So what does the future look like? As a young person, it can feel like you're fighting against Thanos with the infinity stones of economic pressures. High cost of education, crippling debt, a broken job market, unaffordable housing, inflation, automation, and changing work-life dynamics all come together to hold Gen Z back from fulfilling their truest potential. Of course, We can't always blame the system. Sometimes people make mistakes and pay the consequences. The classic, fuck around and find out. But at the same time, it's important to highlight when systemic issues that started before you were born can negatively affect your life 20 plus years down the line. The old strategy of going to college and paying for it with a part-time job, getting a high-paying job straight out of college, buying a home with a white picket fence, and starting a family just doesn't reflect the world that Gen Z came to inherit. They say we make more money than previous generations, but in reality, our purchasing power is significantly reduced from theirs when they were our age. Luckily, we have the advantage of having instant access to all of humanity's knowledge and wisdom at our fingertips. We just need to make sure we use it. One thing is for certain, Gen Z is made up of some of the most adaptable people in the world, and I know we can tackle these challenges head on and change our systems so that our children can have a better future than us. That is, if we end up having any. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.